Mamma Mia is a pretty popular show right now. A lot of different companies are doing it, and there always seems to be a lot of discussion on the Facebook groups about how the click tracks work and how the pre-recorded vocals work. So I want to cover right now the click tracks. If you get your programming from KeyboardTek, Kevin Rowland and a few other really great programmers around the country have put together some really terrific programming for a bunch of shows. Check it all out. But they do have Mamma Mia. Really affordable. The company that I worked for, we licensed all of this for $1,000, and it saved a lot of work. So get your programming from KeyboardTek. It comes with the click tracks, and this is important. So here's a copy of KeyboardTek's programming for Keyboard 4. They put the click tracks in the Keyboard 4 book. I've moved them into the Keyboard 1 book for our production that I'm currently working on, but the premise is basically the same. So let's digest or kind of pick apart what they've programmed here. When you get the programming, you'll have a set at the end entitled clicks. And in this, you can see that they have a click track for each big number 1, big number 2, big number 3, and the measure at which the click begins. They've mapped it to, in this particular channel strip and patch, they've mapped it to every single key. So let's turn on the right output. There we go. So as you can see, and I can actually start multiple versions of that because they're all triggering back a single file here in Sampler. So if you're familiar with Sampler, what used to be EXS24 in previous versions of MainStage, you can come in here and you can see that they have one big zone for the single audio file. If we really want to figure out what they've done here, we can see all the audio files if we come into Finder, Show Package Contents, Samples, and then you can see for each of these patches we have just the WAV file, which if we preview it is the audio file. You don't need to worry about that unless you want to start moving the clicks around to different books, which I've done and we'll cover in another video. So now that we sort of understand where the audio files are living that are generating the click tracks, we can come back up here. So let's go to the overture. Here we can see that big number 1, measure 1 click has been aliased from that original folder, and they've put it at the concert level. And if you can see very faintly right here, they've mapped it to a single key. They've restricted the key range using Layer Editor, and here it is. So if you were playing this book just freshly downloaded from their Dropbox folder at KeyboardTek, you would get
1,
this.
2, 3, 4.
And it would be mapped there. Doesn't do us much good, so let's come down here. Here you can see this is where Keyboard 4 is actually playing their part, but on the cue from the conductor would hit the high B flat on their 88-key keyboard.
1, 2, 3, 4.
And trigger the click track. Now, if you're like me, you prefer having some of that control with your feet. I don't like having keys triggering sounds that are not part of the actual score. So what I decided to do is get myself a Logitech UMI3. This is a really great little stomp box. It's about $75 to $100 online, depending on where you buy it, and it gives you these 3 foot switches. Logitech, the manufacturer of the UMI3, also makes this little companion app that allows you to program each of those 3 foot switches to send different MIDI data. Pedals 1, 2, 3 correspond, of course, to pedals 1, 2, 3 on the board, and you can send all these types of MIDI data. For our purposes, we're going to use Note On. MainStage plays really well with that, and the way that KeyboardTek sends the click track in the programming, it's really built to respond to Note On data. So I want to move that click track to a key, but I'm going to move it outside of to a MIDI note outside of the range of my keyboard, which is very easy to do. So we're going to go back up here to the set level. Click on our click track channel strip and I'm going to move it up to D7. That way you can see it's no longer here, and I couldn't hit it accidentally if I was turning a page or reaching for a drink of water or something. So now we're going to come back to the UMI 3, and we're setting pedal 1 for a note on event. It can read on channel 1, and we're going to change that note with this drop down to D7. Now if we go back into main stage, we have to do one more step to get this to work. So go into your layout mode, and you're going to create a very small little keyboard, because that's the only way that I've found that I can get the note on-off data into main stage properly, so that it's listening on the right MIDI port. So I make just a very small keyboard. I drag it so that it's kind of out of the way. The lowest number of keys you can set is unfortunately 13. You can't just have 3 to correspond to your 3 notes on your Logitech UMI 3. So turn off display layers, make it as small as you can, and tuck it somewhere where it's out of the way. Now if we go back into Edit, first let's go back to Overture, go back to the channel strip where the click track lives, and we're going to set it to, you'll see a new keyboard after you've created it. In my case it says keyboard 3. Yours may be a little different, but choose the generally the last one on the list should get you where you need to go. And now we'll give it a try. We'll put ourselves in the first patch of the overture, and we'll hit button 1 on our UMI 3, and
1, 2, 3, 4.
There we go. We've triggered the click track with our foot on a note that is not on the keyboard. So now we have the click track working with the UMI 3 unit, but in rehearsal you're eventually going to have to stop that click track if you need to go back to fix a light cue, scenic change, if your band messes up or something. So let's figure out how to stop that click track also with the foot patch, or the foot pad. So we're going to go back into our UMI 3, and we're going to assign pedal 3 to another note. We'll say E7 just for to keep things organized, since we use D7 to start the click track. Go back to File, save to the UMI 3. Now go back into main stage. This is a little bit easier. Go back to your layout tab, and if you rent the programming from KeyboardTek, they're going to have a panic button built in here for you. The way that the click track is configured out of the box, it's not a playback track as such, it's just a one-shot sampler. So we're going to use panic, which is just sending a MIDI reset command to main stage to stop that, that click track from playing. So in your layout tab, click the panic button, then we're going to click assign and press the number 3 button on your UMI 3, and you'll see that it's assigned. So now if we go back to our Edit tab, let's start our click track.
1, 2, 3.
And let's assume this is the point in the rehearsal where things have gone awry and you need to stop. Now we're going to hit the button 3 on the UMI 3, and you can see it sends a MIDI reset command and it stops that click track right away. Now when you want to restart, you simply find the patch that you want to. Now when you want to restart, unfortunately the way this is configured, you'll have to start at the beginning of the click track. There isn't a way, as it's configured out of the box, to start the click track in the middle. So stop judiciously, but if you do, you have to start right back at the beginning again. The last thing to be aware of in setting up your click track is where the audio is going to route. You certainly can't route it into the main bus that sends all your other patches, because then your audience will be listening to your click track, which is probably not the desired effect. So what you have to do is make sure that you're using a multiple output audio interface. Right now in my office at home, I'm using a Zoom UAC2 to power my speakers and whatnot so I can hear things. But if I wanted to, I could, just as an example, I'm going to use a Black Hole 16 channel. This gives me a lot more audio outputs to choose from. So you can see here in the click track, it's currently assigned to 1, 2, which is also my main output, which is where all of my, for instance, this Fender Rhodes will end up. It goes to the main bus, this goes into a reverb bus, and then that eventually ends up in the main output, which is on channels 1 and 2. Click track is also there, so you'll hear Fender Rhodes and click track, which is not what we want at all. So what we're going to do is just simply change the output here. And because I've changed it over to black hole, now you can see I have a bunch of different outputs. So I can assign that to output 3 and 4. So here you can see that my meters are moving on output 1 and 2 for the Fender Rhodes. And if I started my click track, those meters are moving on 3 and 4. So you can route those separately to your audio department, and they'll fold it back into your headphones or your monitor wedge, however you happen to be listening to the click track. So that is how you set up the Mamma Mia click tracks from KeyboardTek. I hope you find this interesting. In part 2, we'll talk about moving these click tracks into a different book. It's not too difficult, but you need to know how Mainstage is structured so that all the files end up where they need to be. Check out my other Mainstage music theater videos, like, subscribe, comment, all of that, and have a great show.